Welcome back, guys, to Blackout War Stories. 74% of you still haven't subscribed. Before we start the video, hit that subscribe button. It only takes a second. October 12th, 1952, Appalachia. That was the night everything changed. The night our squad was sent on an operation the Army never admitted existed. I can still recall the cold sting of the mountain air as we were dropped off in the middle of nowhere, ordered to secure what intelligence referred to only as a biological threat. No coordinates to speak of, just a hand-drawn grid on a map in the name of the unit assigned, 931. None of us had ever heard of Unit 931 before, and none of us ever spoke of it again afterward. Our squad was small, just 7 men with standard-issue rifles, rations for 72 hours and no backup. They told us this was a containment mission, nothing more. Yet the way our briefing officer avoided eye contact, the way his voice cracked when he handed over the sealed orders, told a different story. He called it classified biological research, but even then, most of us knew that meant something was out there, something beyond the ordinary. The truck dropped us near a ridgeline, headlights cutting through the mist before vanishing, leaving us stranded with only the sound of crickets and our own uneasy breathing. The Appalachians can swallow a man whole, and that night they seemed hungrier than ever. The forest loomed dense and silent, as if waiting for us to take our first step inside. I led point, map in hand, compass steady, though I could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on every man behind me. We marched single file, boots sinking into damp soil, the smell of pine sharp in the air. The deeper we went, the more unnatural the silence became. No owls, no rustling branches, not even the whistle of wind through the trees. Just us and the oppressive stillness. One of the guys muttered it felt like walking into a cathedral where something sacred had been broken. Another whispered it felt more like a tomb. It didn't take long to realize we weren't alone. Tracks appeared along the trail, boot prints too large to belong to any of us, and spaced far apart, like whoever left them covered ground at an inhuman pace. I called for a halt, crouched low, and studied the impressions with my flashlight. The edges weren't fresh but hadn't weathered either. They belonged to someone moving recently and heavily. When I looked up, half the squad was already gripping their rifles tighter. We pressed on. About an hour into the march, we reached what the map had marked as our destination, an abandoned coal facility tucked deep into the valley. Its windows were shattered, the roof sagging under decades of decay. Yet the main entrance was chained shut with fresh locks that gleamed under our lights. Someone had been here long after the mine had officially closed, that someone hadn't wanted anyone else getting inside. We broke the chain. The clang of metal echoed through the valley louder than any gunshot, and for a long moment none of us moved. Then we entered. The stench hit first, iron and rot, thick enough to gag a man. The air was colder, unnaturally so, like the temperature dropped 20 degrees in the space of a doorway. The walls were lined with rusting machinery, but deeper inside we found something stranger. Makeshift medical tables, restraints bolted down, surgical tools scattered across the floor as if whoever used them had fled in a hurry. Glass jars filled with dark, congealed fluid stood stacked in wooden crates. Inside one floated what looked disturbingly like a human hand, pale and swollen, though twisted in ways no normal hand could bend. One of the younger soldiers muttered that we should radio command, but our orders had been explicit. No transmissions unless extraction was required. We were on our own, and whatever this was, we were expected to handle it quietly. That was when the first sound came. Low, guttural, and distant, reverberating through the mine shaft. Not an animal, not a man, something in between. Every instinct told me to get the hell out, but orders were orders. We stacked up, weapons raised, flashlights cutting narrow beams into the darkness, and began moving deeper. Each step forward felt like a step into something the world was never meant to uncover. The sound grew closer, dragging against the silence until it was clear we weren't the hunters anymore. We were being hunted. And that was the moment I realized the Army hadn't sent us here to contain anything. They'd sent us here to bury the truth. We pushed deeper into the old facility, and every step we took seemed to pull us further from the world we knew. The stink of rust and rot clung to our clothes, settling into our throats. The light from our flashlights shook slightly as each of us tried to keep our nerves under control. The sound we'd heard before, low, guttural, was gone now, but its absence only made us more uneasy. It felt like something was letting us move, letting us explore, almost inviting us in. I kept thinking about the orders we'd been given. Unit 931, biological threat, secure and contain. That was it. No mention of locals, no mention of possible enemy agents. Nothing. Just the vaguest warning I'd ever received in my time wearing a uniform. Normally, a mission like this came with stacks of intelligence, aerial photos, full debriefs. This, just a single map and one set of instructions. Do not transmit unless extraction is necessary. That told me more than anything else. Whatever this was, Command didn't want it reaching anyone outside the squad. No radio chatter, no reports, nothing that could leave a paper trail. The men picked up on it too. I could see it in their faces, in the way they looked at the dark corners of the facility. We'd all fought overseas before, seen combat, buried friends in foreign soil. But this was different. Combat had a logic to it. Enemy here, orders there, objectives to secure. This felt like stepping into the unknown with a blindfold on. We cleared the first floor fast, sweeping through the broken offices and shattered storage rooms. Paperwork lay scattered everywhere, most of it water-damaged, unreadable. But a few sheets were intact. Handwritten notes in English, though not military standard. They talked about samples, about exposure rates, about subjects failing to stabilize. Whoever had been here wasn't mining coal. They were experimenting. Jesus, one of the men muttered, picking up a page with words smudged in ink. This ain't no mine. He was right. And the more we found, the clearer it became that this place wasn't abandoned. Not really. Downstairs, the walls narrowed into tunnels that looked older than the building above. The coal shafts stretched on into blackness. That's where we found the cages. Not animal cages. Human-sized, steel bars bent in places, like something strong had tried to tear its way out. Some of the cages were empty, others weren't. The remains inside were unrecognizable, skeletal, twisted, bones fused together at odd angles. One skull had elongated in a way I still can't explain, jaw stretched wide with teeth cracked and sharp. We didn't linger on them. We couldn't. To stare too long at those remains was to admit we were looking at people who'd been changed into something else. I remember thinking, this is why they didn't brief us. If we'd known what we'd walk into, none of us would have come. We set up a temporary post in one of the old offices, barricading the door with a desk and broken chairs. It was protocol, secure a fallback point before pressing deeper. Once we settled, I pulled out the sealed envelope we'd been given and opened it under my flashlight. Inside were three things: a set of coordinates marked deeper into the valley, a single black and white photo of a tunnel entrance, and a typed line that read, "Destroy evidence. No survivors outside the unit." I read it twice, my mouth dry. Then I folded the paper back up and shoved it into my jacket. I didn't tell the men everything it said. Not yet. They deserved to know, sure, but I needed them steady. If I told them the orders were to wipe this place off the map and silence anyone else connected to it, they'd start thinking more about survival than about the mission. In truth, I was thinking about the same thing. We took a moment to eat from our rations. The silence of that room was crushing. The only sound was the crunch of crackers, the tearing of packaging. Someone tried to crack a joke about the taste of the rations, but no one laughed. We were too aware of where we were, too aware of the smell of rot seeping in from the tunnels below. Then came the first real sign that we weren't alone. A clang echoed through the facility. Metal striking metal, distant but sharp enough to make every one of us freeze mid-bite. Rifles came up, flashlights cut across the walls. The sound repeated once, twice, then fell silent. It came from the shafts below. We formed up, leaving one man to hold our fallback point, and moved down into the tunnels. The deeper we went, the colder it became. Our breaths fogged in the beams of our flashlights. The floor grew damp, the air thick with the smell of mildew and something else. Sweet, sickly, like decayed meat. That's when we found the symbol, carved into the rock wall, deep and jagged. It looked like a circle broken by 3 lines that spread outward like branches. None of us recognized it, but it was old. The edges were weathered, like it had been there long before the facility was built. "Locals?" one man whispered. I shook my head. "This isn't local." It was more than a mark. It felt like a warning. Not long after, we reached the spot from the photo in the envelope. The tunnel split in 2, but the left passage was sealed by a steel door reinforced with heavy bolts. On the door, painted in white, were numbers, 931. That was it. The unit name, the designation, the mystery we'd been thrown into. I ordered 2 men to check the right passage while the rest of us examined the door. The steel was scratched, gouged, as if something inside had clawed to get out. The bolts were new, stronger than the rusting equipment around it. Someone had been down here recently to make sure the door stayed shut. I didn't like it. Every instinct told me opening it was a mistake, but the coordinates had led us here, and our orders were clear: contain, destroy. Before we could decide, the 2 men we'd sent down the right passage came running back, pale-faced, breathing hard. They said the tunnel ended in another chamber, filled with more cages. But those cages weren't empty. Something was inside them, something alive. We didn't wait for details. We pulled back, regrouping at the steel door. The sound of movement echoed behind us, metal clanging, the rattle of chains. Whatever was in those cages was waking up. And as we stood there, flashlights on the bolts of the steel door, I realized the worst choice we'd have to make wasn't whether to go in, it was whether to face what was behind that door, or whatever had just been let loose in the tunnels with us. One way or another, we were already trapped. And that's when the real mission began. We stood at that steel door, guns ready, hearts pounding, and I swear I could feel the weight of the whole mountain pressing down on us. Behind us, the sounds from the other tunnel grew louder. The rattle of chains, a scrape like claws against stone, followed by a low moan that didn't sound human at all. Every man in that squad knew what it meant. Something was loose. I had 2 options: push forward through the marked door or face whatever had gotten free behind us. Neither choice felt good, but standing there, frozen, wasn't an option. "Move," I ordered. We turned away from the sealed door and aimed our rifles down the tunnel where the noises echoed. The flashlights cut through the dark, catching glimpses of wet stone and hanging wires. The smell hit us first: rot, sweat, and blood. Then the shadows shifted and we saw movement. The first shape stepped into the light, and my stomach turned. It looked like a man once, but its skin hung loose, gray and blistered. Its arms were too long, bones jutting at sharp angles, and its mouth stretched wider than it should have, filled with cracked, jagged teeth. Its eyes were gone, nothing but hollow sockets. Yet it moved straight toward us, like it didn't need sight to know exactly where we stood. "Fire!" The tunnel erupted with muzzle flashes. The gunfire was deafening, the echo so powerful it felt like the whole tunnel might come crashing down. Bullets tore into the thing, ripping chunks of flesh and bone. But it didn't fall. It staggered, jerked, and let out a scream that shook the ground under our boots. Then it lunged. One of the men went down, slammed against the rock by its weight. I pulled the trigger until my rifle clicked empty. Finally, after a full barrage from the squad, the thing crumpled, twitching in a pool of black fluid that hissed when it hit the stone floor. We barely had time to breathe before we heard more movement. Not 1, not 2, dozens. Chains rattled, cages banged open in the darkness beyond our lights. "Fall back!" I shouted. We pulled toward the steel door, boots splashing through the wet floor, reloading as we ran. Behind us came the sound of scraping claws, heavy footsteps, and those awful screams. When we reached the door, I spun on one of the men. "Get it open!" "Now!" He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Sir, we don't know what's in there." "We know what's behind us," I snapped. He nodded, hands trembling as he worked the bolts with a crowbar. The rest of us formed a line, firing bursts into the black tunnel. Shapes rushed at us, half-formed things that once might have been men, now twisted into nightmares. They didn't stop, didn't scream in pain. They just kept coming. The last bolt screeched free. We shoved the door open and poured inside, dragging the man who'd been tackled earlier. His arm was shredded, teeth marks deep in his flesh. He kept muttering, shaking, trying not to look at the wound. We had no time to treat him. Inside was another tunnel, smaller, but built differently from the mine. The walls were smooth concrete, reinforced with steel plates. This wasn't old. This was military. Our lights flickered across painted numbers, sealed crates, and equipment too new to match the abandoned facility above. As soon as we crossed the threshold, I ordered the door slammed shut. Bolts fell back into place, sealing us off. The pounding started almost immediately, things throwing themselves against the steel. Each impact rattled the tunnel, dust drifting from the ceiling. "Where the hell are we?" someone whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't know. We pushed forward, rifles raised, until the tunnel opened into a chamber lit by a single flickering bulb. The sight stopped us cold. Rows of glass tanks stretched from wall to wall, filled with thick green fluid. Inside floated shapes, humans, or close to it. Some were incomplete, torsos without legs, heads without eyes. Others looked almost alive, their chests rising and falling slowly, as if still breathing under the liquid. Wires and tubes connected them to machines that hummed softly. One of the men cursed under his breath. Another crossed himself. None of us could look for long. At the far end of the chamber sat a desk stacked with folders and reels of film. I rifled through the papers, my hands shaking. The documents were typed, stamped with military insignias I didn't recognize. The words made my blood run cold. Unit 931, Appalachian Research Detachment, Project Inheritance, Subject Exposure, Human Adaptation to Biological Agent. I read aloud until my throat tightened. The words biological agent leapt off the page, along with phrases like uncontrollable mutation and containment protocols. They weren't just experimenting here. They were creating something, and from the look of those tanks, they'd succeeded. A bang rattled the steel door again, louder this time. The creatures hadn't stopped. They were still out there, hammering against the barrier. We couldn't stay. We pushed deeper through the facility, the injured man groaning as another soldier helped him along. The halls twisted into more rooms, some filled with surgical tables stained dark. Others with stacks of jars like the ones we'd seen earlier. Only these held larger pieces, organs, limbs, skulls too warped to be human. The deeper we went, the stranger it became. Symbols carved into the concrete walls, the same broken circle we'd seen earlier, only these glowed faintly under our lights. And the air grew colder, almost freezing, though no draft moved through the sealed tunnels. That was when we heard it again, the low guttural sound that had first drawn us in. This time it wasn't distant. It was ahead of us. We crept forward, every step deliberate. The tunnel opened into another chamber, larger than the last, and at its center stood a single tank, taller than any of us, filled with fluid so dark it looked like oil. Shapes shifted inside, too big, too twisted to make sense of. Tubes ran from the tank into the walls, pulsing like veins. Then as we stared, something inside pressed against the glass. A massive hand, pale and clawed, slammed against it, leaving cracks that spiderwebbed across the surface. We stumbled back, weapons raised, but the glass held. For now. "I think this is what we're here for," one man whispered. Maybe he was right. Maybe this was the core of it all. The experiment, the source, the reason Unit 931 existed in the first place. Before I could speak, the injured man collapsed, convulsing on the floor. His arm where he'd been bitten was swelling, veins bulging black under his skin. He screamed, and as we rushed to hold him down, his body twisted in ways no body should. His jaw cracked open wider, teeth sprouting jagged at the edges. His eyes rolled back, sockets bleeding. We didn't have a choice. I raised my rifle and pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the chamber, and silence fell heavy after. No one spoke. We all knew what it meant. Whatever this infection was, it spread fast. Too fast. The pounding at the door behind us grew louder. Cracks echoed in the steel, metal groaning under the weight of what clawed at it. And in front of us, the giant tank continued to crack under the force of whatever pressed inside. We were trapped between two nightmares, and it was only a matter of time before one broke through. I gripped my rifle tighter and told the men to ready themselves. Because in that moment, I knew we hadn't been sent here to contain anything. We'd been sent here to die with it. The pounding on the steel door grew so heavy that dust shook loose from the ceiling. Every slam echoed through my chest, reminding me we had only seconds left before those things forced their way inside. At the same time, the cracks running across the glass tank in front of us spread wider. Black fluid seeped through, dripping onto the floor with a hiss that ate into the concrete. We had enemies on both sides and no clear way out. I scanned the chamber, searching for options. On the far wall, partly hidden behind pipes, I spotted a service hatch. It was small, maybe big enough for one man to crawl through at a time, but it was better than waiting for death. "Over there!" I shouted, pointing. The squad moved, dragging our gear and stepping carefully around the body of the man we'd lost. No one wanted to look at him, not after what had just happened. We all knew it could have been any of us. The hatch was rusted shut. One of the guys wedged his bayonet in the seam and pried, metal screeching as the hatch groaned open. A rush of stale air hit us, carrying the smell of damp earth. The tunnel beyond looked narrow and unlit, but it was a way forward. Before we could move, the sound we dreaded finally came. The steel door behind us snapped, bolts screaming as they ripped free. The pounding stopped, replaced by the scrape of claws dragging over metal. They were in. "Go!" I yelled. The first man crawled into the hatch, rifle slung over his back. Another followed. I stayed near the chamber with two others, covering them. Our flashlights swept across the broken door. Shadows moved, shapes too twisted to fully see, but close enough that their stench rolled into the room. We opened fire, bursts echoing loud enough to rattle the walls. The creatures shrieked, stumbling forward even as bullets tore into them. Their bodies jerked with each hit, but they didn't stop. Black fluid sprayed across the floor, sizzling like acid wherever it landed. One of the men beside me screamed as some of it splashed onto his arm, burning through his sleeve and skin. He fired wildly, stumbling back. I grabbed him by the collar and shoved him toward the hatch. "Go now!" He crawled inside, groaning in pain. I was the last to move, backing toward the hatch while firing at the advancing creatures. One lunged, its arms stretching farther than they should have, claws grazing my boot as I dove through the hatch. We slammed the cover behind us and locked it with the inside latch. The tunnel beyond was tight and uneven, cut into the earth like a crawl space. We had to move on hands and knees, flashlights cutting weak beams ahead. Every sound echoed, our breaths, the scrape of gear, the pounding that still shook the hatch behind us. We pushed forward until the tunnel widened into another chamber, this one rough-hewn from stone. Unlike the sterile concrete rooms we'd seen before, this looked older, like it had been dug centuries earlier. Strange carvings covered the walls, the same broken circle symbol repeated over and over. The men whispered, voices hushed despite the fact that nothing could hear us down here except echoes. One of them swore the symbols glowed faintly, pulsing like veins under the rock. I didn't want to admit it, but I saw it too. At the center of the chamber lay a pit, wide, deep, and black as tar. Cold air drifted up from it, so cold my fingers went numb around my rifle. One of the men kicked a stone into the pit. We waited for the sound of it hitting bottom. Nothing came, just silence, as if the pit swallowed even sound. We backed away, sticking to the walls. I wanted nothing to do with that hole. The tunnel on the far side led us deeper. The walls here were lined with wooden beams, rotting and splintered, old mining supports. We were back in the original shafts, but lower, deeper than any map had shown. As we moved, we found signs that others had been here recently. Burned out lanterns, cans of food stacked in corners, even bedrolls laid out on the floor, but no people. It didn't add up. Who would camp down here? Then we found the journal. It was lying near one of the bedrolls, pages warped from damp air. I flipped through, shining my light across the smeared handwriting. The words chilled me more than the air. They come at night. We can hear them moving through the walls. They said the serum would make us strong, but it burns, it eats us alive. They can't stop it. It spreads faster than they can contain. If anyone finds this, don't open the black door. Don't wake it. The last page was just a drawing of the broken circle symbol, drawn over and over until the page tore. I passed the journal around. No one spoke as they read, but the silence said enough. We kept moving, slower now, every man on edge. The tunnels twisted and dropped until we reached another chamber, this one lined with cages again. Unlike before, these cages weren't bent or broken. They were still sealed, and inside them were people. At least they looked like people. Thin, pale, their eyes wide and glowing faintly in the flashlight beams. They pressed against the bars, whispering in voices so faint we had to lean in to hear. "Help us. Please. Kill us." The words mixed together until I couldn't tell which was real. Their skin rippled as they spoke, muscles twitching under the surface like something alive moved inside them. One of the men raised his rifle. I grabbed the barrel and shoved it down. Not yet. As much as I wanted to end their suffering, I knew firing a single shot would give away our position instantly. And part of me still clung to the hope that they were salvageable, that they were victims who could be saved. But when one of them pressed his face to the bars, I saw his teeth. Too sharp, too many, and I knew hope was wasted here. We moved past them, their whispers chasing us down the tunnel until we were clear. That was when we heard voices ahead. Not whispers, not creatures. Real voices. English. We froze, listening. Men were speaking somewhere deeper, words muffled but steady. I motioned for silence and led the squad forward, sticking to the shadows. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber lit by electric lights strung from the ceiling. At the center stood a group of men in clean uniforms, not ragged like us. Their patches bore insignias I didn't recognize, black and silver with the same broken circle symbol. They weren't surprised to see us. In fact, one of them smiled when our lights caught his face. "About time you arrived," he said calmly. "We've been expecting you." The squad shifted uneasily, rifles aimed, but I held up a hand. "Who the hell are you?" I asked. "Unit 931, the man said, "and you've walked right into the heart of it." Behind him, I saw another tank, larger than the rest, its glass cracked, fluid dripping steadily onto the floor. And in that moment, I understood the twist none of us had wanted to face. We weren't here to stop Unit 931. We were Unit 931's final test. The chamber fell silent after those words. "We've been expecting you." The man's calm voice didn't match the nightmare pressing all around us. He and the others stood straight, unshaken, while our squad kept rifles leveled, hands shaking on triggers. "Drop your weapons," one of my men barked. The stranger only smiled. "If we wanted you dead, you wouldn't have made it this far." Think about that. I could feel my squad's eyes on me, waiting for my call. The pounding in my ears matched the faint throb of machines running somewhere behind the walls. My gut told me the man wasn't bluffing. Something kept us alive this long, and it wasn't luck. "You're running this?" I asked. "Not running," he said, his tone flat. "Preserving, perfecting. This place is older than your country. We didn't build it. We found it. We're only continuing the work." I stepped closer, rifle still trained on his chest. "Those things in the cages? The ones that just tore through my men? You call that work?" His smile widened. "Progress never comes without sacrifice." Before I could answer, a sound cracked across the chamber. The giant tank behind him groaned, glass splitting further down the middle. Black fluid poured across the floor, spreading fast. The men in uniform didn't move. They stood like guards at a ceremony, waiting for something. One of my squad muttered, "We need to get the hell out of here." The leader of the strangers turned his head slowly, eyes fixed on the cracking tank. "You came here to contain, to destroy. But the truth is, you were sent here for one reason, to bear witness." The tank shattered. Glass and fluid exploded outward, drenching the chamber floor. The lights flickered, sizzling as sparks hit the wet ground. And from that tank, something began to rise. At first, it looked human. Massive shoulders, arms, and a torso. But the proportions were wrong. Its head was stretched long, jaw split down the middle like it could open twice as wide. Its skin was pale, streaked with black veins that pulsed like they carried tar instead of blood. It let out a roar so deep the walls trembled. The men in black uniforms dropped to their knees, arms raised as if worshiping. "Fire!" I screamed. Our rifles lit up the chamber. Bullets tore into the creature's flesh, but it didn't fall. It staggered once, then charged. The ground shook under its steps. One swipe of its arm sent two of the kneeling men flying into the wall, their bodies crushed on impact. Blood splattered the rock. The others kept kneeling, whispering prayers even as it tore them apart. We scattered, diving behind crates and machinery. The creature slammed into the ground where one of my men had just stood, stone shattering under its weight. He rolled aside, firing point blank into its chest. The bullets only slowed it, each impact spraying black fluid that burned through the floor. One of the soldiers hurled a grenade. The explosion shook the chamber, filling it with choking smoke and raining debris. But when the dust settled, the creature still stood unshaken. Half its face was gone, but bone and sinew twitched and knit themselves back together. "Nothing's stopping it," someone shouted. The leader in black, half his ribs exposed from where the creature had torn him open, still crawled toward it, blood pouring from his mouth. "Glory," he rasped, "it will inherit the earth." The creature stomped down, crushing him underfoot. We fell back toward the tunnel we came from, but the cages we'd passed earlier rattled violently. The prisoners, if you could still call them that, were awake now. They slammed against the bars, eyes glowing, teeth gnashing. Some of the cages bent with the force of their blows. "We can't go back," one of my men shouted. The creature roared again, swinging its arm through the chamber. The impact slammed into a crate, sending it skidding across the floor and knocking another soldier flat. He didn't get back up. I grabbed a satchel charge from my pack. It wasn't meant for caves this deep. It was demolition grade, enough to bring down walls. But maybe that's what we needed. "Cover me," I yelled. Two men laid down fire, their rifles spitting sparks into the creature's chest. It roared, raising an arm to swat them aside. But the distraction gave me the seconds I needed. I sprinted toward the far wall, planting the charge against the cracked stone. My hands shook as I set the timer. The creature turned toward me, its jaw split open, wider and wider, until it looked like its whole head might tear in half. A sound poured out, not just a roar, but a vibration that rattled my bones, made blood drip from my ears. I stumbled back, ears ringing, vision swimming. The timer beeped faintly under the noise. 30 seconds. "Fall back!" I shouted, waving the men toward the far tunnel. We ran, boots slamming on stone, lungs burning. Behind us, the creature's roar grew louder, closer, pounding after us through the chamber. The floor shook with every step it took. We dove into the next tunnel just as the charge detonated. The blast was like thunder in a coffin. Rocks split, walls caved in, dust and fire shot through the chamber behind us. The ground heaved, throwing us off our feet. When the dust cleared, the tunnel behind was gone, sealed by tons of collapsed stone. The creature's roar cut off abruptly, smothered by the cave-in. For a moment, none of us moved. Our chests heaved, ears rang, eyes watered from the dust. But we were alive. We staggered to our feet, checking gear, counting heads. Out of 7, only 4 remained. Nobody spoke. Nobody needed to. We all knew what we just faced wasn't dead, it was only buried, and buried things had a way of finding their way back. We pressed on through the tunnel, flashlights flickering in the dust-filled dark. None of us had any idea where it led, but going forward was the only choice left. The tunnel twisted downward, deeper into the mountain. The walls here were carved smooth, not natural, not mineshaft rough. Someone, or something, had built this long before any of us were born. At last, the tunnel opened into another chamber, this one circular, with a stone altar at the center. The broken circle symbol was carved into the floor around it, massive and jagged. The air was so cold our breaths fogged instantly. We approached slowly, rifles up. On the altar lay a book, its leather cover cracked and stained dark. Pages fluttered, though there was no wind. One of the men reached for it. I grabbed his wrist. "Don't!" But curiosity burned in their eyes. After everything we'd seen, we wanted answers. I opened the book myself, the leather stiff under my gloves. The pages were filled with handwriting I didn't recognize, but the words were English. They spoke of rituals, sacrifices, and binding the blood of the earth. One line stuck with me. The vessel must remain sealed, lest the inheritance awaken too soon. The vessel, the tank. I closed the book hard and shoved it back onto the altar. We didn't belong here. We never had. Before we could move, the ground shuddered again. Far off, deeper than the tunnels we'd sealed, came a sound that made every one of us freeze. The roar. It was alive, and it was still coming. "Move," I said quietly. "Now." We ran again, pushing through a side tunnel that branched off the chamber. The roar followed, echoing closer, shaking dust from the ceiling. Rocks tumbled, striking our helmets. We burst into a narrow shaft that sloped upward, the air fresher, less heavy. Hope flickered in my chest. We were close to the surface, but hope died when we saw the final door. It was steel, reinforced, bolted just like the one deeper down. Stenciled across it in fading paint were 3 numbers, 931. We had reached the true entrance, or maybe the final lock. Behind us, the roar shook the tunnel like thunder. The bolts on the steel door rattled as if something on the other side already knew we were coming. And in that moment, I realized the truth. The Army hadn't sent us here to stop Unit 931. They hadn't even sent us to die. They'd sent us to replace it. We weren't just soldiers anymore. We were witnesses, custodians, and now we were trapped in the cycle they had created: fight, bury, and wait for the next poor bastards to stumble in. The roar came again, so close the tunnel wall shook. My men raised their rifles, eyes wild. I gripped mine tighter, knowing the fight wasn't over. It was only beginning. The steel door marked 931 stood in front of us. Bolts rusted but strong as the roar behind us grew louder. Every step of that thing shook dust down from the ceiling. My men aimed their rifles into the dark, but we all knew bullets weren't going to stop it for long. We had seconds to decide: open the door and face whatever was on the other side, or stay and fight until the tunnel collapsed on us. I made the call. "Get it open!" We yanked at the bolts with crowbars, hands slipping on sweat and grime. The metal screamed, giving way piece by piece. Behind us, the roar grew into a howl that rattled through my bones. Then came the scraping sound. Claws against stone, closer, faster. The last bolt snapped free. We shoved the door open and stumbled through, slamming it shut behind us. The latch locked with a clang, just as something slammed into the other side. The impact nearly threw us off our feet. But this time, the door held. The silence that followed was worse than the roar. No pounding, no claws, nothing. Just stillness. We raised our lights. The space beyond wasn't a tunnel. It was a bunker. Concrete walls lined with shelves of sealed crates, barrels, and filing cabinets. Old electric lamps buzzed overhead, still working somehow. It looked like command had known about this place for years, maybe decades. We spread out carefully. The room was lined with papers, maps pinned to boards, reports stacked on tables. I picked one up, scanned it, and felt my stomach twist. It listed dates going back before the war. Names of towns in Appalachia, some I recognized, some I didn't. And beside each name, field test. One of my men held up another file. Inside were photos, grainy black and white images of bodies, twisted like the creatures we'd fought in the tunnels. Men, women, even children. The captions read, "Failed exposure." I dropped the papers, bile rising in my throat. Whatever this project was, it hadn't started here. This place was only one of many. The men looked at me, waiting for answers I didn't have. "We finished the mission," I said finally, my voice low. "We burned this place to the ground. We searched the bunker for explosives, fuel, anything we could use. It didn't take long to find. Crates of dynamite, cases of blasting caps, enough to collapse half the mountain if we wanted. While the others set the charges, I sat at the desk and opened one last folder. Inside was a typed memo stamped "Top Secret, Eyes Only." It read, "Unit 931 operation remains classified. Containment priority above all else. In the event of breach, deploy disposable assets under cover of routine patrol. Eliminate evidence. Survivors not authorized. Disposable assets." That was us. I didn't tell the others. There was no point. They already suspected, and knowing for certain wouldn't change what needed to be done. We wired the explosives along the walls and ceiling, careful but quick. The plan was simple: blow the bunker, bury the tunnels, and pray nothing made it out. Before we left, one of the men grabbed a handful of files and stuffed them into his pack. "People need to know," he said. I almost stopped him. Orders screamed in my head, "Destroy evidence." But I didn't. After everything we'd seen, I couldn't bring myself to silence him. We found another hatch at the far end of the bunker, leading into a narrow shaft. A ladder climbed straight up, rusted but intact. At the top was a rusted grate, and beyond it, the smell of pine and cold night air. We climbed out one by one, emerging in the middle of the forest. The moon hung pale above the trees. It felt unreal, like we'd stepped from one world back into another. We wired the charges to a timer and sprinted into the trees, desperate to put as much distance as possible between us and that cursed hatch. When the mountain rumbled behind us, the explosion was like thunder rolling across the valley. Birds scattered from the trees and the ground shook under our boots. We turned back to see smoke rising through the trees. The tunnels, the labs, the cages. It was all buried, or so we hoped. No one cheered, no one said a word. We just kept walking. By dawn, we reached the extraction point. A truck waited, just like before. The driver didn't ask questions. We climbed in, covered in blood and dust, and rode in silence back toward base. At the checkpoint, men in clean uniforms met us. They didn't salute, didn't ask if we were okay. They just took our weapons, our packs, everything we carried. When one of the men resisted handing over the files he'd taken, they pulled him aside. I never saw him again. The rest of us were separated, debriefed in cold, windowless rooms. The officers didn't care about the creatures, the tanks, or the bunker. They asked the same questions over and over. Did anyone else see? Did you transmit anything? Did you tell anyone where you were going? Every answer was written down, and when the questions stopped, they told us the mission never happened. Our squad didn't exist. Unit 931 didn't exist. They split us up after that. Different assignments, different postings, never together again. I heard later that 2 of the survivors died in accidents within months. Another disappeared on leave and was never found. That left me. For years, I carried the weight of what happened in those mountains. I kept my mouth shut because I knew what would happen if I didn't. The Army made sure we understood, talk, and you vanish. But silence doesn't erase memories. I still hear the roar in my sleep. I still see the man twisting into something else right in front of us. I still feel the heat of the explosion under my boots. And worse, I know it didn't end there. We buried one facility, but the files showed there were others. Other valleys, other towns, other caves, more field tests. Unit 931 wasn't a mistake. It was a system. And systems don't die easy. That's the truth command denied. The truth we were never meant to tell. And maybe I'd stayed quiet forever until I realized one simple thing. If we don't talk, if no one ever hears what happened, then it'll happen again. Maybe it already has. Maybe it never stopped. That's the part that eats at me. Because what we faced in those tunnels wasn't just an experiment gone wrong. It was something older, buried, waiting. The Army didn't create it. They only fed it, shaped it, tried to use it. And no matter how many tunnels you blow, no matter how many men you silence, you can't bury something that was never meant to die. I've carried this story for a lifetime. Long enough that most of the men I served with are names on headstones or gone without a trace. Long enough that people who weren't there roll their eyes when you mention secret units or missions that don't exist on paper. But I was there. I smelled the rot in those tunnels. I saw men twist into something no human should become. I felt the ground shake when that thing broke out of its tank. No file, no stamp, no erased report can take that away. For years, I tried to bury it inside me the way we buried that bunker. I told myself maybe it was better that way. Maybe silence kept people safe. But silence never stopped the nightmares. And it sure as hell won't stop whatever was down there from happening again. Because here's the part that won't leave me. The files we found in that bunker weren't about one site. They listed others. Appalachia was just one dot on a map full of them. If you think that mountain was the only place, you're wrong. And if you think they stopped after our mission, you're fooling yourself. Every so often, I'll hear about missing hikers in those hills. Strange illnesses in towns too small for doctors to explain. Animals found torn apart in ways that don't fit any predator. And every time, I wonder if it's connected. If something clawed its way up from the rubble we left behind, or if another team like ours got sent in and never walked back out. I still remember the face of the man who told us, "We've been expecting you." He said it like we were part of a plan older than us, like we were just playing our role in something endless. At the time, I thought he was insane. Now, I'm not so sure. What scares me most isn't the creatures we fought. It isn't the roar that still echoes in my head. It's the thought that the Army knew exactly what it was doing. They called us disposable assets, sent us in with just enough to survive a few hours, but not enough to come out whole. They didn't want heroes. They wanted silence. And in the end, they got it. They split us up, erased our records, buried our names under missions that never happened. Out of 7 men, I'm the last one left to remember. The rest are ghosts now, as forgotten as the tunnels under that mountain. But I can't let it stay buried anymore. People deserve to know that their own government played with fire, that they opened doors in places no doors should exist, that they created things that can't be killed, only delayed. I don't tell this to scare you, though maybe it should. I tell it because the truth has weight, and I've carried it alone long enough. Sometimes, late at night, I wake to the sound of something heavy moving through the trees outside. Sometimes I swear I smell that same sweet rot carried on the wind. Maybe it's just my mind playing tricks, or maybe the mountain never really held. If you take anything from this, let it be this. What we found in Appalachia wasn't just science gone wrong. It was older than that. Older than the Army, older than this country. We stumbled onto something ancient, something that doesn't care about borders or wars or orders, and we woke it. You won't find Unit 931 in any history book. They'll deny it existed, deny any of us ever walked into those tunnels. But I know the truth. I lived it. And the truth doesn't vanish just because men in suits put a stamp on a file. So if you ever find yourself in those mountains and the woods go silent and the air turns colder than it should, leave. Don't wait. Don't look back. Don't go searching for answers. Because some things don't stay buried. Some things wait. And I promise you this, the day they rise again, there won't be enough guns or soldiers or bombs to stop it. That was Unit 931's legacy. That was the mission we were never meant to survive. And now it's yours to remember. You're still watching without subscribing? Make sure you don't miss the next story. Subscribe now and share with your friends. Tell us your country, the time you're watching, and any real-life incident like this, then post it in the comments.